Welcome, Pontiac High School, to this lesson. This is lesson 4.5a. We're going to be looking at the first part of a presidential nomination process. So when we nominate a presidential candidate in our American system, what we do is we have each political party choose their candidate. And this is done at a national convention, so a big meeting of all these people from their political party from all around the nation. But only certain individuals get to vote at these conventions. These voters are called delegates. And the delegates to these conventions are selected by the states that they represent. So Michigan would have delegates at the national convention. Now, each state chooses its own method for how they select those delegates, how they select the people that get to go to the national convention and vote for president. One of those methods, and the most popular method, is something called a presidential primary. We have one of those in Michigan. In these elections, voters get to choose who they think should represent the political parties. And this is a method used by 37 of the states, so most of them do use this method. But it's kind of an interesting process. We go in and we think that we're voting for a candidate, but really we're voting for a delegate that has pledged to vote for that candidate at the national convention. It's this weird little sideways thing, but it generally seems to work out. Now, here's a brief history of those primary elections and that primary election process, because this was not how it was originally done. Primaries were created because people view the caucus and convention systems to be too corrupt. We'll get into the caucus in a little bit, but basically a caucus is a meeting, and then the convention is a bigger meeting. And people just thought that these were corrupt. Not enough people were participating. It didn't represent democracy. They didn't like it. So primaries first appeared in Wisconsin. They were the first state to do it back in 1905. It was so popular and it worked so well that by 1916, 11 years later, over half the states were using a primary system where everybody gets to vote, if you're a member of the political party, on who would represent that party. So in primaries today, each state gets to run them a little bit differently. There are some differences between states along the way. Each state decides how they wish to determine their delegates at the national convention. However, the end result in each of these states is that voters get to choose the candidates. They are run differently. They occur at different times, but they are all better representations of democracy than what had been done in the 1800s. There are some quirks to the system. New Hampshire's got an interesting one. It's a state law that they will always be first. So whenever somebody else schedules a primary election, New Hampshire schedules theirs to be first. So it is the first primary. And the others are spread out over about a 5-month period of time. So these elections really do stretch out. We have proportional representation. So we've got a winner-take-all primary elections are banned by the Democratic Party. Okay, the Democratic Party does not allow them. So if one candidate wins 51% and the other wins 49%, the idea of winner-take-all is that all delegates, let's say you had 100 delegates for simplicity's sake, all 100 would vote for the candidate that won 51%. The Democratic Party, though, has banned that. That is illegal. If you got 51-49, the split should represent some of that popular divide. The Republican Party has also done this in a lot of states, but not in all states. Some states for the Republican Party are still winner-take-all. Now, most states will give representation to candidates who achieve at least 15% of the votes. So you might finish third or fourth in a state, but still get delegates who will vote for you at a national convention. So you might win a couple of states and then finish third and fourth in a whole bunch of others and still be in the running for president of the United States. Now, above 15%, each candidate is guaranteed to have a number of delegates that matches the percentage of votes they received. So if you got 15% of the votes, you will get 15% of the delegates. If you got 14% of the votes, you're not going to get any of your delegates, and your delegates will then be reassigned to those candidates that received a greater portion of the votes. All right, evaluation of a primary. Primaries have been criticized because they can divide a political party. They are a divisive process, and the Republican Party particularly saw this in 2016, although the Democratic Party saw it as well. Some would like to see a single nationwide primary or a few regional primaries. So if we just had it all in one day and just got it over with, it wouldn't drag out the process so long. Or you do 2 or 3 regional ones to find out what candidates are preferred by particular regions. These are some ideas, but nobody's really tried to do these. Long primaries do have an advantage. They help the public to really learn about a candidate. Over that 5-month period of time, you have to really try to avoid learning who these people are. You can't get through a primary session without knowing who these people are unless you literally never read the news or watch the news or listen to news radio. You have to know who these people are because it's just all over the place. Now, that's the primary system. The other one that we use in America is called the Caucus Convention system. It's been used a lot longer than the primaries, but it's less popular and amounts to being less than 1/4 of the total delegate selection. In this system, local meetings of voters, caucuses, it's a local meeting of voters, elect delegates to state and district conventions. So you actually are in this meeting with other people from your town or your neighborhood, and you actually pick a person who has pledged to vote for your candidate. Those delegates go to a state convention, and at that state convention, they go through the same process. And results in however many delegates your state has, those delegates are chosen at that state convention, they go to the national convention, and they vote for the candidate that they have pledged to vote for. Now, why have we changed from doing caucus convention to primarily doing primaries? Well, caucus convention system is less popular because it's very easy to corrupt. If it's just you and a small group of people, it's much more easy to influence the votes of others. When you've got 20 people in a room, 1 or 2 people can really pull a lot of sway on that room and convince others to vote in a particular way, sometimes by perfectly appropriate means, sometimes by illegal means. They are, however, still used in many states. Iowa is the best known. It has the first presidential caucus and the first presidential contest in the country. It's usually done about a week before the New Hampshire primary. So you'll see in every presidential year, candidates flocking to Iowa and New Hampshire, because in Iowa and New Hampshire, that's going to be their first opportunity to have people vote on whether or not they should be the president, and they want to get a good relationship with those states early on. That's all for today. We've got a lot more on how we choose our presidential candidates, but that's coming up next time. Thank you and farewell.